So we're now going to move on to our final presentation for this morning, after which, again, we'll be happy to respond to your questions. And then we're going to have a very general questioning session so that you can return with some of the questions we haven't yet got round to. So this next presentation is called Financial Provisions of the Call, and our speaker is the Financial Officer for the European Innovation Council and SMEs Executive Agency, Alessandra Pace.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Alessandra Pace. I'm a financial officer in AISMEA. Today, I will talk to you about the detailed budget table that you have to include in your proposal in order to participate to the call for Erasmus for young entrepreneurs. I will show you the main features of the detailed budget tables and also some other parts of the proposal where you have to encode the same figures that you budget in the detailed budget table. Let's see, first of all, how the detailed budget table is composed. First of all, you will see the instructions in the first tab of the Excel sheet. The Excel sheet is composed of 5 sheets. We will see shortly all of them, and then we will focus on the detailed budget table. In the first tab, you will find the instructions, how to print the PDF. You have to add it in, you have to merge and attach it to the proposal. And then you will see also that you will have a first highlight on how the detailed budget table is composed of. It is broken down by cost categories, and that's to be finalized by each participant. The second tab is dedicated to the start of the file. You have to encode the project data related to the number attributed to your project, the acronym of your project, the short name of each participant, and the participant identificative code. Then you will find a button where you have to click to encode and to insert each work package. They will be automatically numbered in the index column. Then you will draft the name of each work package, shortly describe it, and start planning the number of travels that you think you will need to implement each work package. You have also the option to delete the work package that you have encoded. The third tab is related to the detail table that has to be filled in by each participant individually. We will go back to this tab in some seconds, and we will focus on this part. The fourth tab is the consolidated table per participant. It will be automatically created once the detailed budget table in the third tab is finalized. While the fifth tab is the consolidated table per project. It has to be filled in manually by the coordinator once he has the data for each participant. On the left upper part, you will also find, of course, the number of the project and the acronym that will be automatically filled in on the basis of the data encoded in the second tab. But let's focus on the third sheet of this worksheet, the detailed budget table. As said, the costs have to be budgeted by categories. And we will have a look, first of all, at the cost categories that you can encode in the detailed budget table. This budget table is divided into 2 main parts. One is dedicated to the costs that you will incur and you will first of all budget for your project. And then the part in green at the bottom, at the end of the cost of the project, has to be filled in with the income that you foresee you will need to cover the costs. These 2 parts, of course, have to be in balance. The costs have to be covered by the income of the project. The cost categories for your project related to the implementation of your actions are the costs for personnel, for subcontracting, the costs for the purchase of other goods and services. Other cost categories that in the case of Erasmus for young entrepreneurs are the costs for the financial support for new entrepreneurs, and then the indirect costs, while the income is made up of the grant, the EU contribution, the revenues and contribution that might be provided by third parties, and your own contributions. We will see them in details. The cost categories in personal costs are the costs that you might incur for your employees or other staff members who have an equivalent appointing act and work in the action. You might have also in-house consultants who would be natural persons working under a direct contract. You might have also seconded staff or SME owners who do not have a salary, or natural persons beneficiaries without a salary either. The costs for personnel have to be encoded under category A. You will see that once you encode the work packages in tab 2, then the rows will appear in the detailed budget table related to each work packages for any type of cost. Here we have a look at the part related to the personnel. Then we have the employees that you can choose in a menu, but you can also freely type the name of the personnel, of the type of personnel that you might have working in the project. You will have to make an estimation of the costs that you will incur for the personnel. You can choose a monthly rate or a daily rate, and then indicate the rate. If it is a daily rate, you will have to divide the annual salary by 215 days. Then you will have to indicate the time that this personnel will be working in the project, and the calculation will be automatically made. Please always indicate if this personnel is also working under other work packages, and please do always remember to describe the tasks that the staff will perform. Apart from the detailed budget table, you will be required to encode the data also in Annex 5 and in other parts of the templates of the proposal. Please remember, in the case of personnel, to be consistent with the data you will include in Annex 5 and the additional information related to the technical description. Here you have requested to indicate the position of the staff member, the skills, the tasks, and this table, as said, has to be coherent with the data you encode in the budget table. Here in part 5 of Annex 5, you are requested to include the planned effort in days and in months of the personnel you require. Again, please be consistent with the time you have included in the detailed budget table for each staff member of any category that you decide to include in the project. The costs for employees or equivalent staff members are eligible if, of course, they are related to personnel working in the action. These costs have to be limited to salaries, to social security contributions, to taxes, and also to any other costs that arises from the national labor law or the employment contract. You will see, and this is explained in the guidelines you will find online, that you have to use the daily rate of the person multiplied by the number of days worked in the action. As said, the daily rate is calculated dividing the annual personal cost of the person by 215 days. The costs for natural persons are eligible, as said, and also for secondary staff. If these members of the staff are, again, assigned to the action, if they work under conditions which are similar to those of the employees, and if the result of the works belong to the beneficiary, to the partner of the consortium who employ this personnel. For SME owners without a salary and for natural persons beneficiaries without a salary, the costs are eligible and have to be budgeted basing their calculation on the unit costs set in the Commission decision that you will find online. You will have to calculate the amount set in the Commission decision, this 4,880 euros, multiply the relevant country-specific correction coefficient, and then divide the result by 18 days, which is the average number of days for each month. Then let's go to another budget category, the subcontracting costs. You are not allowed to subcontract costs related to the core tasks, which are the main tasks for the implementation of the project. In the case of Erasmus for young entrepreneurs, you are allowed to subcontract costs only for work package 2 and only for the promotion of the program. You have to describe these costs in the technical description. What is the main feature of subcontracting costs? The subcontractors work without the direct supervision of the beneficiary. And for this, they are different from the in-house consultants who can be considered like employees. The result of the work of the subcontractors, however, relies fully on the beneficiaries of the grant. When you choose your subcontractors, you have always to ensure the best value for money, or you can choose on the basis of the lowest price. And you have always to avoid any conflict of interest. Here you see how the detailed budget tables appears in the case of subcontracting costs. You have to budget the costs based on your estimations, on your experience as well. And please remember always to tell us whether these costs will be repeated for other work packages, and shortly describe these costs and the tasks that will be subcontracted. In the application form, so in another part of the proposal, you will see another table, this time in Word, where you have to list the subcontracting costs. Here again, you will shortly describe the task. You will indicate the beneficiary in charge of these costs, of course, the amount, and how you will ensure the best value for money. Again, my recommendation is to be coherent. Try to be complete and check at the end whether the costs correspond to the ones you have budgeted in the detailed budget table. The costs for purchase contracts are the costs related to contract for services, works, goods that are needed to carry out the action. They are not necessary to implement the action as the costs for subcontracting, but are important to carry out the actions. So they don't have to be described in detail in the technical part, but you have always to ensure the best value for money principle, or that you choose on the basis of the lowest price. The purchase costs are divided in 3 main categories: the travel costs and related costs for travels, the equipment costs, and the costs for other goods and services. The travel costs include also the accommodation costs and the subsistence allowances. They have, of course, be budgeted only for the personnel working on the action, and they have to be justified. This is important. You can budget costs related to the participation of a seminar, which is described in the technical part. And you have always to remember that you have to keep the documents for this travel. And these costs have to be budgeted based on your usual practice. So you make estimation on the basis of previous travels that you have made for your organization, but also you can choose to budget this cost on the basis of the amounts set in the Commission decision of 2021. In this case, you will see that in the detailed budget table, you can choose where to include these costs. In the column actual costs, if you have made estimations based on your experience, on your knowledge of these costs, or you can choose to put this cost under the category unit cost, but please remember to respect the amounts set in the Commission decision. These amounts are related to the distance of the destination or the and of course the country of destination. Equipment costs are reimbursable if they are both new or second-hand, but you can also choose to rent them or have a leasing contract. They have to be recorded in the assets following the International Accounting System rules and your usual practice for the registration of the assets. But please remember that you have to take into account only the portion of the costs that corresponds to the duration of the action and to the rate of actual use for the project. Here we see the detailed budget table that you will have to include the price, the method of depreciation, so whether it is this piece of equipment is depreciated over 24 or 36 or 60 months, the number of months you will use, and the rate of use. If a project manager working only at 10% of his time on the project is using exclusively a laptop, then the rate of use will correspond to that percent, of course. Other goods and services are the ones purchased specifically for the implementation of your project. Again, you have to ensure the principle of best value for money when you choose them, or the lowest price, and you have to budget them as actual costs. That is, costs actually incurred during the implementation of the project. This service can be, for instance, the catering costs or goods like the leaflets, or of course services like the printing of leaflets, the translation, the certificates of financial statements. In the detailed budget table, you will see that some categories have been already preset. You will find consumables, information and publication, or certificate for financial statement, but you can easily type also the names of other goods and services that you esteem will be necessary for the implementation of your project. Please always remember to describe shortly these goods and services in the last column. Other cost categories in Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs calls are related to the financial support to new entrepreneurs, to third parties. Here you see that you have to budget them and always provide an explanation, but also you have to remember that the financial support to third parties is related to the expenditure for travel, accommodation, subsistence costs, and other costs that the new entrepreneurs will incur for staying in the host country. You can budget these costs on the basis of the Commission decision of 2022, which sets some amounts depending on the country, on the host country where the new entrepreneurs will be staying. And you will see these same amounts in the quality manual. Please remember that the costs incurred for financial support to new entrepreneurs will be reimbursed at 100%. Other recommendation, please stick to the amount per month, and please always remember that the minimum length of the exchange for the new entrepreneurs is 1 month and the maximum is 6 months. So the financial support to the new entrepreneurs will be the monthly unit cost calculated based on the host country and while staying in this country. Said for other cost categories, please be coherent in another part of the template of the proposal in Annex 5. Here again, you will find the table 1.2, where you have to list the new entrepreneurs. And of course, they have to, the amounts have to stick to the ones foreseen in the detailed budget table. The indirect costs are the last category of costs that you will have to budget. They are linked to the so-called overhead costs or running costs. That is, the costs like the rent of the office and the utilities that are not linked to the implementation of your project. They are reimbursed at a flat rate of 7%, which is automatically calculated in the detailed budget table, as it appears now. At the end of the part in blue, which is related, as said, to the costs for each participant, you will see the total costs. And as said, these costs have to be in balance with the second part of the detailed budget table related to the income of the project, which has to be made up of the EU contribution, so the grant, which covers, as said, at 100% the financial support to new entrepreneurs, at 75% all other cost categories. This revenues can be also the income generated by the action. Other sources like the contributions from third parties, meaning parties which are not partners of the consortium, that can be in kind or financial, and the own contribution of the partners of the consortium. Here you see the percentages will be automatically calculated for the EU grant. And then in this part, at the end of the detailed budget table, each participant will indicate how it counts to cover the costs of the project apart from EU grant. You can choose, of course, all resources. If you have contribution by other third parties, you will be also required to indicate which this third party is and how this income will be covered. Please, again, be consistent, because you will be required to sum all these costs in another part of the template of your proposal in the administrative forms part 8, where you will be requested to encode in a table in Word this time all the costs broken down by participant. And please remember to be coherent with the amounts you have set in the detailed budget table. I have highlighted here some parts. Please show here as well that the costs and the income are in balance. I am at the end of this presentation. Then I thank you for your attention, and I wish you good luck with your project.
Alessandra, thank you very much. Really informative and very helpful, I suspect, to a great many people who are planning to submit their proposals.